everybody for coming along tonight to the RSG annual footy tipping competition. Thanks so much for joining us, and we're very privileged and lucky tonight as well, of course, to have special guest Adam Cooney join us.
Yes.
Thanks
guys, I appreciate it, making me feel very welcome.
Adam has obviously had a very, very successful career in AFL football. He obviously played for the Western Bulldogs for 10 years, and then obviously 2 years with Essendon. Played 250 games, kicked over 200 goals.
Yeah. She's getting there. She's building to it. She's building to it. It's the crescendo. Getting drafted was a highlight. As an 18-year-old kid, just turned 18, just finished school, and the draft was on I think it might have been on a Friday afternoon in Adelaide. They flew me over for the draft, and then you go back, pack your bags, say goodbye to your parents, and then Sunday I was in Melbourne, and that was it. So it's pretty daunting for an 18-year-old kid who has relied on mum and dad for his whole life, and then they just sort of throw you over here. I had no money when I came to Melbourne. I didn't have footy boots, believe it or not. Yeah, thanks Dad. So he sent me over to Melbourne with no footy boots and no money. So I borrowed $100 from my manager when I came to Melbourne, and he organised some football boots for me, and that was sort of my first experience. I cried myself to sleep the first 3 or 4 weeks when I came over to Melbourne, but I didn't think I would survive even my first pre-season, but luckily enough I did. And I never thought I was going to win, really. It was a very close count too, so it was up until the last round. It was almost the last game of the last round where Simon Black, Gary Ablett and Matthew Richardson from the Tigers, they could all win it if they got votes. So I think Ablett and Black were a couple of votes behind me, and so was Richo. So for 3 or 4 rounds they were all ahead of me, and I was on 21, they were on 22 votes, and none of us polled for the last 4 games, I think, and then I got 3 in round 21. So I hit the lead really late, and then I was a bit nervous leading into the last round. But even if I lost the Brownlow that year, I think I still would have been pretty proud of how close I got. I would have told everyone I was leading the Brownlow in round 21, you know. When you're at the Brownlow, you only get maybe 1 minute between the ad breaks to go to the bathroom and come back. If you don't get back in time, they lock you out. So after about round 16, I went to the bathroom. I was in there for probably half an hour. I don't even know. crawled to the bathroom, and by the time I got back, they'd shut the doors and they'd lock the doors. Okay. And it was probably 3 rounds, and they do 3 rounds of voting before they have another ad break. Yeah. And the security would not let me back in. So I was standing out the front. I went up to the bloke and said, "Listen, mate, you might have to let me back in. I'm a chance to win this thing tonight." And I was like, "Oh shit! Well, we better let you back in." And then I walked back in, and I think I was 2 votes behind leading into the end of the Brownlow count, and I got, ironically enough, I got 3 votes against Essendon in round 21, which puts me, I think, 2 votes ahead. And at that moment, after 4 days of non-stop drinking, I sobered up pretty quickly, and I was even more pale than what I am today, which says a bit about where I was at. So I sculled the water as quickly as I could and hoped that I could hang on, and luckily enough I did, and stumbled up on stage, and it was one of the worst Brownlow speeches you'll ever hear. But it was a bit of a whirlwind sort of experience. I actually wish that I didn't drink as much on Mad Monday now, so I could actually enjoy it a little bit more. And I just felt really sorry for him, for everything that he'd been through. Job, he's a man of high integrity. Job, he's really honest with himself, comes from a great family, great footy family, so I just feel sorry for what he had to go through. Obviously bore the brunt of everything that happened at Essendon for 4 years. Those players had no knowledge of what was actually going on, and people say, "Oh, how can the players not know what was happening?" They were being injected with these sorts of things, and I sort of say, well, when you have a vaccination or something like that, you go to the doctor, and the doctor says, "Oh, you're having this vaccination." You don't say, "I want to know what's in that vaccination." You trust what the doctor gives you. Due to the collision with my kneecap, because of the force, which split the kneecap and actually sheared away all the cartilage underneath the kneecap. So pretty much from 22 years old, I was a bone on bone with my knee. So it wasn't ideal. And just won the Brownlow. Supposed to be hitting it, supposed to be hitting the peak of my powers at sort of 23, 24, and wasn't able to, unfortunately, get back to my best football. In 2012, I contemplated retiring with a doctor. Sat down because I couldn't run, I couldn't do anything, I couldn't do leg weights. Basically, if something fell on the ground, I would have to sit on the ground to try and pick it up because I couldn't bend over. So, fortunately enough, contemplating retirement at the end of 2012, I went over to Germany, found a doctor over in Germany who did some treatment. He treated the Pope and he treated Kobe Bryant. So I figure I'm sort of on the podium for the top three most famous people that he's treated. He still tells people that he treated Adam Cooney over in Germany. So I thought if it was good enough for the Pope and it was good enough for Kobe Bryant, surely it's good enough for me. So I went over to Germany at the end of 2012 and had some treatment on my knee, which fortunately saved my career. I was able to, I had a reasonable season in 2013. I still wasn't back to the player that I was in 2008, and I never would be. Even now, I always stand like this on my left leg because I don't put any pressure through my right knee because it still hurts, which I'll carry for the rest of my life. But that's what happens when you play AFL footy. I didn't work hard in my first 1 or 2 years of my career. Probably 3 years I wasted due to being unprofessional, enjoying going out with the younger boys and drinking and socialising. I was still able to get a game, but I didn't actually play that well in my first 2 or 3 years of AFL footy. And Scott West, Brad Johnson and Rowan Smith pulled me aside at the end of one off-season and said, because I didn't try, there would have been a couple of off-seasons where I trained maybe, we get 8 weeks off at the end of the season. Sometimes I would have trained 2 or 3 times in the 8 weeks before we go back to training and drink 5 nights a week. So you can imagine the state that I used to roll into pre-season looking like. And they pulled me aside one pre-season and said, look, you're going to come and train with us 3 days a week in Melbourne, Monday, Wednesday and Friday. They used to pick me up at 5:30 in the morning, dragged me out of bed and took me and actually do some training. So that was 2007 when that happened, and I won the Brownlow in 2008. So I probably owe a lot of the success to those guys actually dragging me out of bed and forcing me to train, because I probably wouldn't have done it otherwise. And then from there, once I actually got myself fit, it was a lot easier. So those guys I owe a huge amount of gratitude for. What drove me in my career to try and be successful was the fact that losing was so much worse than winning. If you win a game of AFL footy, you get 15 minutes after the game where you can really enjoy it, sit back, relax. But then your game review on a Monday is positive. Your training throughout the week is positive. So you're actually a lot happier during the week. Whereas if you lose, your game review, they pick apart everything. The coaches are in a bad mood, and that gets you in a bad mood throughout the week. So
losing was never an
I just found that, being almost a fear of failure, rather than the exhilaration of winning was what drove me. But I think the biggest change, first of all, is the social media stuff and mental health with players. Professionalism is another one. Like in my first 1-2 years, if we got to recovery on the next day, that was a massive, like you were a professional player. If you got there and went to the beach, it wouldn't matter if you walked in with a beer and a dart hanging out your mouth. As long as you got there, you're a professional. Now, you can't get away with anything like that anymore. So even drinking, you can't really drink that much as an AFL player, which is unfortunate, because you have so many good times. Like you bond with the players as well when you've had a few. A lot of players will take it with a grain of salt, but there'll be maybe 5 to 10 from each club who will read social media and be really affected by what they're saying. And it won't matter how well you've played on the weekend. You could have 35 and kick 3 or 4 goals. You check your social media at the end of the game, and there'll be people abusing you for whatever. So you can't. Doesn't matter what you do, you can't win on social media, unfortunately. So it's tough for young players coming in now, because they read everything. Players, I used to do it even in my last couple of years, all you got to do is type in your last name into Twitter and have a look at it after a game, and you'll think, geez, I don't want to play anymore. I don't want to run out there again in my life. So it's pretty tough for players now. You just have to focus on the people internally, what coaches are saying to you, and to take notice of the people around you more than the outside world. People ask me about how it felt when the Dogs won the premiership, and I said, it's a little bit like watching your ex-wife win Powerball. You've put in so much work and hard yards over the years, but unfortunately you don't reap any of the benefits from that.